for watching This Is Now. Now, this summer, HPD launched Operation Firestorm, a multi-agency campaign to crack down on Oahu game rooms and all the crime that comes with it. Now there's a new effort to keep those illegal operations from popping back up. Casey Lund explains.
Aloha from Kalihi. The building behind me, the site of one of those busts, part of Operation Firestorm that started earlier this year and ran through the summer. There were a number of busts, not just here in Kalihi. This one, though, concerning because it's, of course, right across from Kalihi Uka Elementary School. And that school, as a matter of fact, has sent in testimony about this problem. They want to see some change. And the problem is not so much with enforcement, it's after the fact, after those raids happen, making sure that those landlords are held accountable. And that's what this new package of legislation is meant to address, introduced by Councilmember Andrea Tupola, as well as Councilmember Tyler Dos Santos Tam, who's with us today. Tell me a little bit about the two bills that are going to be instrumental in creating those consequences. Do they actually add enough teeth, do you think?
You know, the core problem with these game rooms is HPD comes in and does a raid like they did here, but just 2 weeks later, another operator comes in because the landlords, just keep getting that rent money. And so that's the cycle we want to break. Bill 57 helps us go after those landlords through the building permit process. A lot of these game rooms have illegal wiring, illegal doors, walls inside. And so we can penalize the landlords who keep enabling this, and hopefully that breaks the cycle. Bill 58 helps DPP and HPD, as well as other agencies, work together in a more coordinated way, again, with the idea to go after the landlords that are enabling these game rooms, while HPD does its thing on the criminal side against the operators.
Those fines, are they high enough to prevent those landlords from just allowing another operation to pop back in here? Do you think that that is going to actually make a difference?
That's what we're hoping. It starts at $1,000 a day, and with continued violations, it'll go up to $150,000 before we start looking at seizing the property. But this is something we want to look at and get community input on, and we have a town hall next Tuesday.
And to discuss that opportunity that people have to engage and learn a little bit more, I have Ian Ross with me. Before we get to the meeting, though, I want to ask you, as board chair of the neighborhood board in Makiki, that area, that neighborhood, what you see where you live, what you hear from your constituents, but we know this isn't just a Kalihi or a Makiki problem.
Yes, absolutely. This has been a reoccurring issue for Makiki and the surrounding areas. All of Townside is also dealing with all of this. I believe it was in 2001, the police arrested someone on suspicion of armed robbery and kidnapping right in the neighborhood I live in, not too far from where I live. You go a little bit further to Kapiolani Boulevard, and we, of course, heard cases last year about it was a sign of a murder at one of these locations. We also hear about overdoses, drug dealing, illegal firearms, prostitution. This isn't just about gambling. On Tuesday, November 14th at 6 p.m. at Oahu Country Club, which is gracious enough to host us, we'll be sitting down and talking with Councilmember Tyler Dos Santos Tam, Councilmember Calvin Say, Major Mike Lambert about what we can do and what our community experiences are. And it's about bringing community leaders together to really stand up to these illegal game rooms that are threatening the well-being of our communities.
Very good. Ian Ross with us from the Makiki Neighborhood Board. If you miss any of those details on the meeting, of course, we'll have those online at HawaiiNewsNow.com. We'll be following those bills through the legislative process. They just passed first reading. They're now heading to committee. We'll send things back into the studio for now.
Hawaii deputy sheriffs are getting trained to use less lethal pistols this week. They'll use Byrna brand launchers. The carbon dioxide propelled pepper projectiles can cause massive bruising and collapse lungs, but they are not designed to kill.
It attacks the central nervous system. Every area of exposed skin is on fire, and their nose will run uncontrollably. Their eyes will not want to open because it's too painful. And all of these symptoms happen for 30 to 40 minutes in unison.
More kupuna are buying these for self-defense since they do not require permits or background checks. Live Safe Hawaii tells us it's selling about 10 every day, ranging from about $430 to $580. More financial help for Maui wildfire victims. Survivors who were injured or lost loved ones in the fires are being granted access to a new compensation fund. It's made up of $150 million funded by the state, Maui County, Kamehameha Schools, and Hawaiian Electric. Those who lost loved ones that opt in could get an excess of $1 million. There's also money for those severely injured. A caveat, though, whoever accepts a payout would waive some of their rights to sue.
Law would require people to sign a release, releasing the parties who are participating in the fund from any tort liability. And to be clear, this is just about for the deceased and the injured.
The way we view this is that as an Ohana, we're all taking responsibility as a state. These individuals have decided that it's in the best interest to help families who have suffered tragedy to begin to heal sooner.
The governor says it may take longer for survivors to get money through legal action rather than through this new fund. The state says it plans to announce more details on the application process in about a month. In upcountry Maui, debris from homes destroyed in the fires is now being removed. Contractors from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers are leading the effort. In all, 16 homes in Kula and 3 in Olinda were lost on August 8th. Cleanup crews began at David Darling's Kula property.
I hope to rebuild and be in by Halloween next year. Might have to move that back, but that's my goal now. 1 year to rebuild.
Fire damaged debris will only be removed from a property if an owner grants permission. South Maui residents are being told to watch their water use. Kihei, Wailea, and Makena are now under a mandatory water conservation notice. County water officials say 2 well pumps have recently failed due to high demand. They're asking for non-essential use to be stopped, including lawn watering and car washing. Meanwhile, upcountry is still under a stage 2 water shortage due to drought conditions. Non-essential use should be stopped there as well. Meanwhile, Hawaii County residents are also being asked to conserve water, and more extreme measures could be coming. Lynn Kawano was on Hawaii Island and has more on the situation that will be getting worse.
Intensifying drought conditions are expected to peak early next year. It's a problem especially for those using catchment systems.
So they're about here.
What is that, halfway?
Yeah, about halfway.
Robert Beck has a 4,000-gallon water tank at his Konawaina home. About half the Big Island's residents, nearly 100,000, depend on catchment.
So just one add-on we did, we put some gutters in just to collect more water.
The entire island is now experiencing drought conditions. Even the normally wet Hamakua area is in the severe category, with South Kohala being in the extreme category. The Department of Water Supply is now asking customers to conserve with a 10% reduction in usage, anticipating those dependent on rain and catchment may need to supplement with water trucks in the coming months.
Designated permanent facilities for haulers to fill up, but when the demand gets to this certain level, that facility cannot handle the traffic load and the wait times. We're already thinking of possible locations that we could provide that need off of a fire hydrant.
That's when we probably had to order right around there. We got nervous. We thought about putting a smaller tank, kind of like a reserve. So far, we didn't have to.
Farmers who don't use irrigation systems are closely monitoring the rain gauges and watching the forecast.
It's a 35-acre farm. We call it Konawaina. Mother Nature waters it for us. So, I always say we're dryland farmers. We depend on rain.
Passing showers this week have helped, but significant rainfall is not expected anytime soon. If the systems can't keep up, mandatory restrictions are expected to go into place. I'm Lynn Kawano, Hawaii News Now.
In a possible sign of progress in the Middle East, Israel has agreed to humanitarian pauses in its fight against Hamas. The announcement came from the White House. Skylar Henry has more.
Palestinians are streaming south by the thousands, evacuating Gaza City, where Israel is tightening its grip on Hamas. Israel has agreed to daily 4-hour humanitarian pauses to allow Palestinians to move to safer territory. But the Prime Minister's office says this is not a ceasefire, which will only happen when the hostages seized in the October 7th rampage are released.
Right now, it's 32 days since then, and we don't have a sign of life from anyone.
The director of the CIA has been in Qatar participating in the negotiations. The U.S. believes as many as 10 Americans are among the more than 200 hostages.
We're hopeful. Things are moving along.
Deep in Hamas territory, Israeli soldiers are battling militants in dense urban neighborhoods. They say they're finding weapons stored and manufactured in residential buildings, including next to a child's bedroom. A U.S. official tells CBS News the humanitarian pauses are a baby step in the complicated process of freeing the hostages. President Biden said he'd asked the Israeli prime minister for longer.
Did you ask him to pause for 3 days to get the hostages out? For that
Yes. I've asked for even a longer pause for some of them.
After a month of Israeli airstrikes, a UN agency called Gaza's humanitarian needs colossal. Aid to the Strip has increased, but with hospitals damaged and the area desperately short on supplies, Italy is sending a hospital ship to be stationed off the coast to treat injured Palestinians. Skyler Henry, CBS News, Washington.
Meanwhile, the U.S. struck more targets in Syria overnight. This comes after an airstrike on a weapons storage facility in eastern Syria Wednesday. According to the Pentagon, the storage facility was linked to Iranian-backed groups. 2 other facilities used by Iranian-backed groups were hit in late October. The airstrikes follow a month of nearly daily attacks by Iranian proxies on U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria. U.S. officials said Wednesday's attack did not result in casualties or any damage to infrastructure. An increase in attacks on U.S. forces in the Middle East has been expected in the wake of the conflict between Israel and Hamas. Singapore is known for its sky-high cost of living, but what might come as a surprise is that some 80% of Singaporeans own their home. That's far higher than Hawaii or even the U.S. as a whole. So how do they do it? Our Emily Cristobal recently traveled to Singapore as part of a delegation of Hawaii lawmakers and housing advocates to find out and get the details on a housing complex specifically designed to strengthen communities.
Public housing complexes fill Singapore's skyline. They can reach up to heights of 50 stories high. Economical, efficient, and the key, for Singapore at least, to ensuring many can own their own homes despite the high cost of living. Now, Hawaii lawmakers and housing advocates hungry for new solutions are looking to the Southeast Asian city-state for some potential answers, including in the form of a first-of-its-kind facility aimed at addressing concerns of urban blight. This is Kampong Admiralty, Singapore's first integrated, publicly funded development that brings together a mix of government facilities and services, all under one roof. The bustling yet homey complex includes 2 11-story apartment buildings and an additional structure that holds a public plaza, a food court with dozens of options, and a fully functioning medical center.
In Singapore, we have a lot of integrated projects already, but the program here is a little bit more innovative because it's about combining elderly public housing with public space, healthcare, commercial and social programs. So it's really putting conveniences at the doorstep of the elderly.
Pearl Chi is part of Woha, a Singaporean architecture firm, and is the director in charge of the Kampong Admiralty project. She says the complex is designed with a, quote, club sandwich approach. At the bottom layer is what developers call a community living room, where people can come together to hang out and eat. The second layer is the medical center, which provides shelter over the plaza. And finally, the last layer creates space for semi-private activities, such as child and elderly care centers, as well as apartments. What also sets this complex apart is their use of integrated greenery. On the top level is a community garden, as well as park space.
We always advocate landscape replacement. So whenever you develop a land, you took away the green open space. And what our government policy wants is to replace it with landscape in the building.
It's a small detail that's gone a long way. Resident surveys make clear the green space is noticed and appreciated as a place for families and friends to gather, or just a spot to get a little peace in the hectic city. In September, a housing delegation led by State Senator Stanley Chang headed to Singapore in hopes of exporting some of their successes to the Aloha State. Chang says the model found at Kampong Admiralty is possible in Hawaii. and even essential. But it won't happen overnight.
It will take time, it will take money, but I believe that the biggest single obstacle is just embracing this vision. If the agencies at the state and county levels are able to see that 20, 30, 40 years into the future, that these neighborhoods will be sites for lots and lots of high-density, mixed-use type housing, then now is the time to start making those investments in infrastructure.
State Representative Troy Hashimoto was also on the trip. He's the chair of the Housing Committee in the House and says it's time to stop studying housing in Hawaii and start building it.
At least in Hawaii, we do this general plan, we have community plans, we have plans sitting on so many shelves out there, and yet that's all that typically happens is it sits on a shelf. One of the biggest things that I took away from this trip is, number one, I think planning is very, very key. That's what they do every day. They set goals and they achieve them, right? And I think that was inspiration for me to make sure that we keep pushing, right? And it's collaborating, it's coordinating, because I think if we keep at it for the next couple of years, I think we're going to see some really good progress.
Both Chang and Hashimoto said they plan to incorporate what they learned in Singapore to their legislative priorities in the coming session. We'll have more coverage of their visit to Singapore and their affordable housing plans in the coming weeks. But for now, scan the QR code on your screen to read more about this story and to listen to a deep dive into affordable housing problems and solutions with Senator Chang and Representative Hashimoto. This is Emily Cristobal for Hawaii News Now.
Thank you so much, Emily. Let's take a live look outside now. This is Hilo Bay over on Hawaii Island. The temperature there, 78 degrees on this Aloha Thursday. We got some light winds and dry conditions in the forecast, but as Guy Hagi's going to tell us after a quick break, we have stronger winds and showers heading into the weekend. We'll be right back.
We do have an east-southeast breeze, and that will lend itself to slightly higher humidity levels, as well as maybe a few pop-up showers. But the winds get stronger, and they switch. They more from the east by tomorrow. Trade winds picking up speed, and they'll be running quite breezy through the weekend. But the winds will get really strong late Sunday into Monday. Tuesday and Wednesday is when the winds are expected now to be very, very gusty to the point where advisories or warnings might be posted. So we issued a first alert for Tuesday and Wednesday. Heads up, right? Especially if you're on the windward sides. Now, until then, though, things will be relatively calm, although breezy winds pick up tomorrow. That's when we'll most likely see a few more windward and Mauka showers through Veterans Day, mostly in the early morning and overnight hours. And that's going to be the trend, although on Monday, we talked about that front. There's another front, juicier front with more showers in addition to stronger trade winds. And again, first alert for Tuesday and Wednesday, that's when the winds could be producing maybe some spotty power outages, maybe even some downed trees, and that could affect traffic.
The top U.S. accident investigator says the nation's aviation safety system is under stress. Now, this comes as close calls between planes at airports have surged over the past year. Bradley Blackburn has more.
The head of the National Transportation Safety Board told a Senate panel that even though U.S. airspace is the safest in the world, there were 23 serious close calls at airports in the 2023 fiscal year, up from 16 the year before and 11 from a decade ago.
These incidents must serve as a wake-up call before something more catastrophic occurs.
The NTSB is currently investigating 7 serious runway incursions. One was captured in this photo from a JetBlue cockpit in February. As the plane attempted to land at Boston Logan Airport, a small plane was directly in its path. That same month in Austin, Texas, a FedEx pilot had to abort a cleared landing to avoid hitting a Southwest plane.
Southwest abort. FedEx is on the go.
These events put more than 1,300 lives at risk.
Thursday on Capitol Hill, the NTSB, the Federal Aviation Administration, and unions for pilots and air traffic controllers pressed Congress for money to upgrade technology and hire more staff. The National Air Traffic Controller Association says there are 2,300 fewer air traffic controllers working than there should be. Staffing shortages have meant mandatory 6-day work weeks, leading to exhaustion.
Air traffic control is already a highly stressful profession.
There's also concern about a looming government shutdown
that would force the FAA to suspend hiring, close its training academy, delay the pipeline of new controllers.
And that pipeline faces another challenge. The head of the FAA testified it can't increase the number of air traffic control students because there aren't enough qualified teachers. Bradley Blackburn, CBS News, New York.
Hawaii's movie and television industry is gearing up to return to work with the end of the longest actors union strike on record. The 118-day SAG-AFTRA strike ended last night after a tentative agreement was reached with Hollywood studios. About 1,200 local members were among those on strike, including Amy Hill, who was working on a live-action remake of Disney's Lilo and Stitch.
In mid-July, we were still in production on Lilo, and then we struck. So it's been quiet, very quiet.
There's a lot of stuff backed up and a lot of shows, that are thinking about Hawaii, I'm sure. But hopefully, the whole union has to ratify this as well.
The agreement includes new residual payments for streaming programs, along with protections and compensation over the use of artificial intelligence to recreate the images and likenesses of actors. Details on the agreement are expected to be announced later today. Well, a natural phenomenon is bringing people to South Maui. That's because Kealia Pond has turned a bright pink hue. Mark Carpenter explains why.
If you drive past Kealia Pond in South Maui, you can't help but do a double take. The water is like something out of a sci-fi film with a glowing pink and purple hue. Travis Morin got a heads up about it from some friends.
They had heard that the water near Sugar Beach by the ponds were pink. And I was like, I don't believe it. I was like, it can't be that pink. And sure enough, towards sunset, the lighting was good. I just happened to drive by and I was like, it's pink. It's like Pepto-Bismol pink.
Morin posted the watery wonder on Instagram, which pulled down nearly 3,000 likes in just 12 hours.
It just popped like crazy. And at first I was like, I wonder what this is. I mean, is it dangerous or something? But I have some friends who have assured me that it's just a natural phenomenon. It just never happens here on Maui.
A phenomenon indeed. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service oversees the refuge and says it's been at the site for the last 9 days. They say the color change is caused by a type of halobacteria found in waters with high salinity. Kealia's levels are twice the salinity of seawater. It is not likely toxic, and samples have been sent to UH for further testing, and it's not clear how long it'll last. but spectators are savoring the rare sight.
It is so beautiful. It's really, really cool. It is unlike anything I've ever seen. So I've driven by here thousands of times, and it's the first time I've seen it pink, so it's super cool.
It looks like somebody poured a bucket of paint in it. It's so beautiful fuchsia.
Sure it was photoshopped.
Yeah, but it's not. It looks just like the picture that I saw on Facebook.
Mark Carpenter, Hawaii News Now.
And finally, a lot of people are sad that the 3 giant pandas from the National Zoo have returned to China, but maybe this will help cheer you up. Check out this trio of baby Sumatran tigers at the Nashville Zoo. They received a medical checkup, and the zoo said the nearly 3-week-old cubs weigh around 6 pounds each. They're healthy and adorable. The zoo also added each cub, they have a microchip for identification purposes. So cute. Well, thank you for watching. This is Now. We're going to have more headlines coming up first at 4 right here on KHNL. Aloha.